My name is Harper Wynn. I'm 30, a restorative architect by choice and an invisible granddaughter by vote. It took me 2 buses and 1 freezing walk to get here. The house stood like a memory trapped in wood, peeling white paint, the same bay window with the hairline crack I tried to fix when I was 16. I was holding lilies. Grandma hated lilies, but they were the only flowers left at the gas station by the freeway. No one told me she passed. I found out through a LinkedIn post, Melissa's, of course. Heaven gained a matriarch, will honor her legacy through grace and good taste. Attached was a picture of Claire crying dramatically on the front steps of this house, my house. Well, hers now, apparently. I stepped forward. The porch still groaned the same way. 3 soft creaks, then the silence. I reached for the door. The old brass handle was gone. In its place, a keypad, sleek, stainless steel. A blinking red dot that didn't care I used to live here. Didn't care this was where I learned to draw with charcoal, where Grandma taught me to make pancakes too thin and tea too strong. I entered the birthday I used to program into everything. July 6, 1936. Beep. Access denied. I stood there, clutching the flowers. Not because I thought the door would open, but because part of me still believed someone inside might. They didn't. I sat on the porch for 17 minutes, counting bricks. One had a chip shaped like a comma, still there. At minute 18, the Ring camera above the door tilted toward me. I looked straight into the lens, didn't wave, didn't blink. Then I placed the flowers on the welcome mat and walked away. The door never opened, but something else did. I wasn't invited to the reading of the will. Claire said it was family only. So I found the live stream. Yes, they live streamed it. Melissa wore navy. Claire wore beige. Both wore grief like it was part of their inheritance. The lawyer, Mr. Aldridge, same one Grandma used for years, sat at the head of the mahogany table I helped refinish the summer I was 15. He cleared his throat like it was a courtroom. His voice was smooth, slow, staged. To my granddaughters Claire and Melissa, who stayed by my side and tended to the home in my final days, I stopped listening. Not out of pain, out of recognition. Claire hadn't changed a bed sheet in her life. Melissa once asked if mothballs were edible, but they moved in during Grandma's last 6 months, the hospice window. Enough time to stage presents, post stories, erase mine. I used to live in that house too, long before the liver spots and the locked pill cabinet. Back when Grandma still painted, still whistled. I scraped the rust off the railing with her, painted the front steps red because she said red made a house brave. I designed a blueprint for a sunroom when I was 17 and taped it on her fridge. She never took it down, not even when she couldn't remember who drew it. But in that will, I was a ghost. No mention, no nod, just blank space between commas. Later, Melissa texted, "Hope you understand, you didn't really live there anymore." I didn't respond because she was right. I didn't live there anymore, but the house still lived in me, and that's something they forgot to check before declaring me irrelevant. The listing called it charming historical with modern flair, perfect for flip or full teardown. Open house Saturday. 11 a.m. They didn't expect me to show up. I wore gray, hair tied back, no makeup. I walked in like I was just another investor, quiet, clipboard ready, invisible. The realtor smiled. "Looking to buy and renovate?" I nodded. Not a lie. The house smelled like lemon-scented denial. Fresh paint to mask decades of dust. New floors that creaked all wrong. Even the fireplace had been scrubbed of soot, as if erasing warmth could make it sell faster. I moved through each room without touching anything. Only my eyes lingered on the places that weren't quite right. The living room still had that odd slant near the eastern wall. They'd staged a fake piano over it, but I saw the dip. The pantry door had a new knob, brass instead of ceramic. The sunroom blueprint I once taped to the fridge, gone, replaced by a list of renovation opportunities. I asked, "May I see the basement?" The realtor hesitated. "It's unfinished." Perfect. She unlocked the door, the air shifted. The stairs were steeper than I remembered. The same third step groaned, but fainter now, like a warning long forgotten. Down there, the walls were colder, realer. They hadn't touched this part yet, and that's where I found it. One panel of drywall didn't match the rest. It was newer, slightly off color. The paint bubbled at the corners like it was holding its breath. I didn't touch it, not yet, but I walked to it, placed my palm flat. Something answered back. Not a sound, just presence. This was the room where I used to draw, where Grandma read aloud from poetry books no one else cared about, where she said, "The foundation always remembers who stood on it first." I stayed in that basement until the next visitor came down. Then I left quietly, without a word to the realtor. That night I returned. Not with a hammer, with gloves, a flashlight, and a screwdriver. The wall didn't fight me. It peeled open like a kept promise, and behind it was everything they'd tried to paint over. The panel came off clean. Behind it, tucked between old beams and insulated regret, was a wooden box wrapped in oilcloth, hand-sewn edges, sealed with 2 brass snaps that time hadn't rusted. I opened it like you'd open a letter from someone who's already gone, slow, not because I was afraid, but because I already knew what was inside. First, a property deed. Original, signed in 1964. Owner, Imogen Wynn, sole holder. Folded beneath it, a codicil, a legal addendum to the original will. Date stamped. Notarized. Filed at the county records office 4 months before she passed. And in black fountain pen at the bottom. Harper Wynn shall retain all rights to the home at 78 Alder Lane. Any attempt to sell, modify, or transfer ownership without her written consent shall be void. Void. Not contested. Not delayed. Void. Then the letter. Her handwriting was shaky but still hers. The way she looped her YS like violins. Harper, they won't understand why I left this here. Maybe they never did understand you at all, but I do. This house isn't brick and wood. It's every idea you whispered to me when the power went out. It's the floor you painted red because I told you it looked brave. You saw soul where others saw resale. That's why this belongs to you. They'll come with plans and offers. Let them. But you hold the key now, not because I gave it to you, but because you always had it. Love, Grandma. I folded the letter once. Then again. Slid it into my coat. Took photos of every document, angle, timestamp, signature. Then I put everything back, closed the panel, left the house exactly as they left me, untouched, uninvited. Except this time I wasn't on the outside anymore. They thought the wall hid nothing but drywall, but what it hid was a decision. Hers, and now mine. They filed the sale paperwork 2 weeks ago. Listed the house at $1.2 million. Had a buyer lined up. Some startup couple with a drone company and a Pinterest board. They signed contracts, scheduled demo, even booked landscapers to modernize the front lawn. But there was a line in the codicil, buried in page 2 after the language about conditional rights. Any sale, renovation, or transfer shall be null if executed without Harper Wynn's written approval. No exceptions. Null, a word they didn't highlight, so I didn't call them. I called the buyer, attached the scanned documents, filed an injunction with the city's property registrar, flagged the title as contested. 24 hours later, the listing vanished. The open house was canceled, and Claire and Melissa, they started calling. First voicemail, "There's been a misunderstanding." Second, "Grandma was confused when she wrote that, you know she wasn't well." Third, "We were going to share the profit with you." I didn't answer. I didn't have to. They tried a lawyer. I sent mine. At the hearing, they brought tissues and family photos. Talked about time spent, holidays shared, the sacrifices of caregiving. I brought records. Filed dates. Audio of a voicemail Melissa accidentally left mocking Grandma's tea collection while planning which walls to knock out first. The judge didn't even flinch. He flipped through the codicil, looked up. "This home belongs to Miss Wynn. Any action taken without her consent is legally reversed. Case closed." No applause, no outrage, just silence, the kind that only comes after something permanent. They walked out first. I waited until the courtroom was empty. Then I stood, buttoned my coat, and for the first time since the will was read, I felt the ground under me again. The house wasn't lost. It was just waiting for the right name to be spoken out loud and in court. The call wasn't long. It didn't need to be. I dialed the number from the buyer's business card. He picked up on the second ring. "Mr. Leeton, this is Harper Wynn. Beat. The property on 78 Alder Lane, I believe you've entered escrow." He confirmed cautiously. "I'm contacting you as legal beneficiary," I said, "with a filed codicil and verified ownership rights. I'm sending you documents now." I heard the shift in his voice, a pause, then, "You're saying the title isn't clean," I finished. "And any transaction proceeding from here would be considered null, with consequences." I clicked send. 12 PDFs. Stamped, signed, cross-referenced. The kind of evidence that doesn't shout, it simply waits to be read. By 4:00 p.m., the buyer's legal team pulled out. By 6:12, the property was pulled from every platform. Claire called at 6:23. I didn't answer. Melissa texted, "How could you do this, after everything we did?" Everything they did, They locked me out of a house I helped fix with my own teenage hands. They erased my name like it never meant anything. They sold memories I built with my grandmother for aesthetic profit. No, I didn't do this. I stopped what they never had the right to begin. At the court review, they brought more emotion. Claire cried before speaking. Melissa said I was weaponizing legal loopholes. The judge didn't blink. He simply said, "You ignored a binding codicil. MS. Wynn followed due process. This is not a matter of family conflict. This is property law." After the gavel hit wood, Melissa stood frozen. Claire looked at me like she expected apology or rage, but all I gave her was this: "The next time you renovate a legacy, read the foundation." And I walked out. A year later, the locks are mine. I changed them the first day, not because I feared anyone would return, but because some doors need new boundaries. The house still creaks, but now it does so with familiarity, like it recognizes who walks its halls. I didn't flip it, didn't rent it out, didn't monetize the ghost of a woman who raised me. Instead, I rebuilt it, not into something new, but into something honest. The living room still has the same dent in the floorboard, but now there's a rug over it that I wove myself. The sunroom blueprint I drew at 17, I built it, window by window, no contractors, just me. The way Grandma would have wanted, hands dirty, vision clear, and the basement the place they all overlooked. That's where the real work began. I turned it into a studio, not for profit, for potential. Every Saturday, a quiet knock at the side entrance. Children, teens. The ones the system calls too sensitive, too difficult. I call them artists. They come with sketchbooks and silence. They leave with charcoal on their hands and eyes that look up again. We don't talk about trauma here. We translate it. Through color, through line, through space. This house doesn't echo anymore. It hums. With music that's never played on speakers but lives in every restored nail and brushstroke. And sometimes when I stand on the porch with my tea too strong and the wind just right, I swear I hear Grandma whisper, "Now that's brave." Claire texted on December 22nd. "Any plans this year? Wondered if you're doing something at the house." I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, because I wasn't. I'd already made the list, and she wasn't on it. I handwrote the invitations, 12 of them, not printed, not emailed, just pen, ink, and care. To Mr. Delaney, the retired woodworker from next door who brought me lemon scones the day after the court hearing. To Nina, the girl who sketches buildings but never speaks except with her eyes. To Mrs. Huang, Grandma's old bridge partner who never stopped sending me birthday cards. To my old art teacher, who once told me, "Don't be afraid of silence, it's where structure begins." To people who never asked what I could offer, only whether I had a seat. I rebuilt the dining table myself, the one they sold years ago for $200 on Facebook Marketplace. I found it in pieces at a junk shop 3 towns over, 12 feet long, mahogany. I sanded each leg, tightened each bolt, stained it in silence. Christmas Day came cold and clean. Snow on the roof, but laughter in the basement. Ink-stained fingers, warm cider, music that didn't need lyrics. When we sat for dinner, no one asked about titles. No one posed for posts. Just stories, just people. And this time there were enough chairs, no locked doors, no scribbled napkin placeholders. Just a house that knew its owner, and a woman who no longer needed to knock, because she never left. She simply waited until she was ready to invite the right people in.